So let's stick with the iPad first. Really interesting business within Apple. It grew spectacularly, then fell sort of amazingly as well in terms of sales growth.
Yeah, it's the business which was supposed to be the replacement for the iPhone. Unfortunately, people hang on to their iPads, for quite a long time. They happen to have a good life expectancy, essentially. I don't know how many iPads you might have got through, but I've had like 2 in their entire lifespan, which compare that to how many iPhones I've had in the same time, and it's not very many.
I told you before when we discussed this on our radio show that that my iPad, I remember having an argument about my iPad with my boss. I should have said, I'm going to have this iPad longer than you're going to have this job, because it was 3 bosses ago.
I mean, the thing that is really quite interesting about it is that the margins on the iPad are worse than on a laptop. So one might imagine, therefore, that Apple would prefer to be selling laptops and iPads. But of course the difference is that you have apps in your iPad, and so that brings recurring revenue when you buy stuff through the App Store.
Well, that's interesting. So it's not just about the gross margin, especially because Apple's been emphasizing services.
Exactly, yeah. So it's a way of hopefully then driving more revenue over the course of that lifespan, as long as it might be. So actually cutting the price on the iPad, it's a way of getting the tool into customers' hands and hoping they'll be spending more money with it.
Which iPad do you have?
I think I have the iPad Pro, but the smaller one.
Okay, so that's not the mini, that's the real small one.
No, exactly.
So this device that they're announcing new pricing on today, is it the old device new pricing, or is the device itself new?
It's the old device on new pricing, basically.
Okay.
Yes. And it's slightly different memory options going on there as well.
Oh, and how dramatic is the price drop?
So it's $329 now, which is quite a big drop off from what it was before. It's, I mean, still not an insubstantial amount of money, considering you can get a laptop for just over $100, I think. So it's, it's still a big chunk of cash.
And this is, again, it's not the very big one, the Pro one, but it's the one that's sort of the size of a sheet of paper.
It's kind of interesting the way that they're differentiating now between their products. They, if you think about Apple back in the day, in the 90s, they were considered very much for the creative industries. Think about these original iMacs and things. And gradually, they've moved into the broader market. Now, there's a certain recalibration in some senses because they're introducing these Pro models, and the lowest end Pro model is, starting at above $600. So that's an even more substantial chunk of cash for it.
So how does this work in terms of the developer community and what they're trying to get done there? Because they obviously have the killer app on the phone wasn't phone calls, but it was lots of other stuff. Maybe it was Uber, maybe it was something else. But
one of the problems which a lot of people highlighted is that the way that the App Store used to be set up was in such a way that you would pay for an app once, maybe use it a couple of times, and perhaps never use it again. Now, what Apple is increasingly trying to do is incentivize developers to develop apps which are subscription-based, and therefore they are more compelling. Now, of course, that brings more revenue, but it does serve to make the iPhone or iOS devices more broadly stickier, i.e. you keep on using them because the apps within the phones, within the devices are really compelling.
Also, the time cycle for the replacement cycle, what you suggested with the iPad. We've also seen it a little bit with phones, and certainly with PCs, at least in the PC industry writ large, where people are not updating with the latest new OS when it comes to the PC business, the non-Apple business, non-Mac business. But with the iPad, with the phone, those times are getting stretched out longer and longer. Is that because people tend to have all three?
I think there are a number of different factors at play here. On the one hand, you have the fact that some people think that there's not a huge amount more innovation you can do in a smartphone, that the curve is flattening a little bit.
Right.
On the other hand, there's a sense that perhaps everybody who has or needs a smartphone has a smartphone now. So the opportunity to attract new customers is limited. And I think those two elements are at play slightly. Apple, of course, benefited a little bit in the final quarter, or the final calendar quarter of last year, because of the Samsung recall, and that helped them regain a lot of market share.